Good evening. Lori Vallow Daybell sits in jail tonight as a convicted killer.
A jury here in Boise finding her guilty on all charges, and tonight we're learning what comes next. I'm live outside the Ada County Courthouse, and it was here where everything went down earlier today. We're also getting our first look at the form that was signed by all the jurors as they were in that deliberation room. Take a look here. This is the document that was filed, and you can see on here the jury marking guilty on each of the 6 charges: murder and conspiracy to commit murder and the deaths of Lori's 2 children, Ty Lee and JJ. Conspiracy to commit murder of Tammy Daybell, her husband's first wife. Also, grand theft is on there. Of course, after that form was filled out, it was read in front of Lori in the courtroom.
Is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan? Answer, guilty. Is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow? Answer, guilty.
We are also learning Lori's stay in the Ada County Jail is about to come to a close here. A newly filed court document shows that Fremont Sheriff's officials have 1 week to move Lori back to the Madison County Jail. And after sentence, the extradition process will begin to send Lori to Arizona to face charges there in connection with the death of her late husband, Charles Vallow. We do have team coverage for you tonight on this guilty verdict. We've got Lauren Steinbrecher and Dan Rascone. Dan was outside here when that verdict came down, and there were crowds of people. He's got reaction on that. But we're going to start things out with Lauren. Lauren, you got the chance to talk to JJ's grandparents. They were a fixture throughout this trial. An emotional day for everyone, but especially them.
Absolutely, Mike. I mean, this is now years of just stress and anguish that Kay and Larry Woodcock have been feeling after that verdict was read today. They could breathe a sigh of relief.
Walking out to cheers and chants of J.J. Vallow's favorite song. We will rock you. A celebration, guilty on all charges.
We are elated with this. There was some doubt we would get all of them, all guilties, but we did it.
The Woodcocks relieved Lori Vallow Daybell is headed to prison for murdering their grandson, though heartbroken for what they've been through the past 3.5 years.
JJ, I love you. Papa, wish you were here. In other circumstances, Tylee, Papa loves you. Tammy, I never met you. Tammy, you are part of our life.
They're grateful for the team who made it happen, who also walked out to their own cheers. Larry singing his favorite song he and JJ always sang together, with a message for Lori.
Turn out the lights. The party's over. They say that all good things must end. Lori, it ended.
Yeah, and Kay Woodcock pointing out that we are going into Mother's Day weekend having this verdict come down. Now, while tonight they are certainly able to just take that moment and process and soak in what happened today, they said they are now looking forward the next 90 days. We're expecting that sentencing to happen in about 3 months, Mike.
Yeah, it's been a busy day and an emotional day, especially as mentioned for them. Lauren, thank you so much. We're also getting word from Tammy Daybell's family. They released a statement earlier today as friends and family leave flowers on her grave in Springville, Utah. They say in part here, we are relieved and grateful that justice has been served with the guilty verdict in Tammy's tragic murder. While this cannot bring Tammy, JJ, and Tylee back, we are glad that the justice system has done its job in holding the responsible person accountable for her actions. We are also learning and hearing from Lori's family as well. Her uncle says that this has been a difficult time for the family, and even with today's guilty verdict, there is still a lot for them to process.
The children, what they did to them, I don't know that there can be enough justice in this life for being that evil. We're feeling like we're getting some healing.
Connor goes on to say Lori and her mom are in regular contact, speaking to her in prison on a weekly basis, and says it appears that Lori's delusion continues. Now, I got a chance to speak with Kyle Dunphy from the Deseret News earlier today. He was in the courtroom when that verdict was read. It was interesting to have a conversation with him and his eyes as he was in there. He said the tension in the courtroom before that verdict was read, you could cut it with a knife. It was intense. And he talked about Lori as well, as I asked him specifically about her reaction. Usually when she came in throughout this entire process for the last 5 weeks, there were many days she was smiling, kind of joking around with some of her attorneys. That was not the case today. She came in somber, straight-laced as she was in there with almost little to no expression. In fact, after the verdict, when it came down by the jurors, she glared at each of those jury members. But everyone else...
This is weeks of a really intense trial that all came to a head in about 2 minutes. And so it was just a massive weight off the shoulders for the victims, family, and the law enforcement officers, everyone involved with this case.
A sigh of relief and more than a few tears and hugs for everyone else who was in that room. Now, that was inside. On the outside, there were crowds. Once we heard earlier today at 11:45, the verdict was in. It was going to be read at 1 o'clock. People started filtering in here. It wasn't just media. You had people from all over the area that was building up, and coming here. They wanted to be a part of this. They wanted to see what was going on. Dan Rascone covering that part of the story for us tonight. Dan, you were out here. My, oh, my, the emotions were high, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, the emotions were very high here, Mike. You know, all along in this trial, the judge did not allow cameras inside of the courtroom there. So this was really the folks' first look to be able to see what was happening inside that courtroom without being in there in person. They allowed it to be streamed to the public, and everybody outside gathered around their cell phones.
I'm shaking.
An anxious crowd gathered outside the Ada County Courthouse.
State of Idaho plaintiff versus Lori Noreen Vallow.
As they watch the verdict unfold from a YouTube feed, this is the moment they all have been waiting for.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled action.
The fate of 49-year-old Lori Vallow Daybell coming down at 1 o'clock this afternoon.
First-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow.
Dozens of people all glued to their cell phones.
Answer guilty.
Guilty.
All feeling a sense of justice. 6 different charges.
Answer guilty.
And all the same
Answer guilty.
answer.
Guilty, 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 guilty. Oh my gosh.
And then the cheering. The reaction on everyone's faces said it all. Justice is served.
100%, this is absolutely what needed to happen.
It's consumed my life, and to know that she's going to be put behind bars for the rest of her life.
Idaho actually did justice.
Super emotional and just thrilled.
For those who had a front row seat inside the courtroom, they were shocked by what they saw from Lori.
No emotion. Just sat there with her arms crossed, stone-faced, lip pouting. It reminded us of a teenage brat.
No emotion from Lori, but plenty from JJ's family.
I was sitting close to Larry and Kay and Jerry, Charles Vallow's brother, and they were holding hands and hugging and crying.
Yeah, outside the courtroom here, it didn't just include people from Idaho here. I met several people from Utah and several other states. It kind of goes to show you the interest that's been out there during this entire trial. Many people following it on social media and getting any information they could. That was kind of how the interest went across the world. Mike, back to you.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting when you say, Dan, because you didn't have cameras in the courtroom. There was still that high interest level. People following on Twitter, following news stories. They knew all the players in this whole trial. It was very fascinating. Dan, great report. Thank you very much. All right, as we continue on here, after 5 weeks of difficult testimony from expert witnesses, today's verdict was met with an array of emotion. KSL legal analyst Greg Skordas says what he hopes people take away from this trial is confidence in our legal system.
At the end of the day, a woman killed her children, and she's been convicted of that, and there's no joy in that. But the system worked.
Conspiracy.
Skordas says Lori has the right to appeal her case, which he believes she will do. If that happens, the case is likely to end up in the Idaho Supreme Court. Keep it right here on KSL as we continue to follow the developments in this case. You know, Deanie, we talk about the timeline here. It started 3 years ago. Here we are right now. and it still has quite a ways to go. The spotlight, of course, has been on Lori throughout these last several weeks. It is now shifting to Chad Daybell. And the big question is the verdict in this case going to affect what happens in his case, which is scheduled to be here in court in about a year from now? A lot can happen, Deanie, within that time period. Who knows? We may never even get to that trial. We'll have to wait and see.
Right. Mike, thanks to you and the entire team up there. What a day. Thank you.